There we go. Welcome, everyone. And one moment, I'm going to drop some links in the chat here really quick. Welcome, welcome. All right, so if you're just joining us, we're just getting started. You can probably see some chat messages showing up. And what we're doing is we're introducing ourselves by putting in the chat our name, our pronouns, where and what we teach, and then a simple answer to the question, when you were a student, what was your favorite class to talk in? So as you can see, my name is Ryan Acosta-Fox, he, him pronouns. I teach English at Northwood High School. And when I was a student, oh geez, I don't have an answer. Debate was my favorite class. I learned more about reading and writing in debate than in frankly, any English class I ever took. So, all right, we'll take a moment to answer our questions. Biology, heck yeah. Hello to Laura and Julie and Katie and Tara, Alex, Nora, Alex. Excellent, excellent. I'm going to send you some links right here. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because we have 30 minutes. And thank you so much for sharing. And we're limited time-wise, so I thought about like maybe we could demonstrate a seminar, but you know, however you feel about virtual learning, I'm personally not eager to return to the world of virtual learning. I don't know if a Zoom seminar would be of great import for us, you know. But I do want to talk about what I just did there. Hello to Lauren. What I did there with the connections question. Okay, so there's I'm going to show you today a particular strategy I use, or two strategies I use for student-centered discourse in the classroom. And in both of them, I always start with what I call a connections question. And what I did with this question, or tried to do with this question, is first thing I do is I sneak in a little bit of context. Okay, I'm framing where we're going to go with today's lesson. We're going to talk about talking in class. So we got that out of the way, right? It's short. Not a lot of stuff to say. You know, don't need to write a novel necessarily about that question. Usually I tell students when we go around and share that you could talk, you know, speak for about 10 seconds, right? Always avoid yes or no questions. And then if this were an in-person seminar and someone had a really wild story about a time that you talked in this class and got in trouble and it was intense, I would say let it go. Let's give it space, and we could see what cool conversations could come from that. So really quick before we get to the objectives, what we're going to cover today in this seminar, if my computer cooperates, is oh, hello, we got more people. Cool. 1 second. While I let someone in. Hello, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and drop the links in the chat really quick. Anyone else wants to check this out on their own computer? There you go. Looks like we got about 25 minutes. I'm remembering to set a timer. So I was just talking about the agenda, what we're going to do. First off, I dropped the links in the chat. The agenda is the document that has every possible resource I'm going to talk about today. So that's what I'm going over right now. Then I want to talk about the history and philosophy behind these ideas for Socratic seminars and connections seminars. And then I want to break down what the seminars actually look like. There's two of them that I'm going to talk about, Socratic seminar and something I'm calling connections. And then I want to reserve 5 minutes to talk about any questions you might have. Okay, so first off, by the end of the day, by the end of this 30-minute session, my goal is for us to, first and foremost, learn about the history, philosophy, and structure of one particular strategy of student-centered discourse. The goal being to engage every voice, every student in the classroom in the discussion. And also, for real, you're going to walk away with 168 lesson plans today, which is almost a whole year if you wanted to make your class the seminar class. So, and also probably more importantly, 2 lesson plan templates and 1 data logging template also. In the agenda, I just want to point really quick to what you'll find. I think of it more of a resource bank than an agenda. You'll find 2 huge folders, one for a Socratic Seminar set of lesson plans, 128 lesson plans split across 4 years I'm going to talk about. A new one, kind of experimental, called Connections. 2 different discussion logs that I'll talk about at the very end. And then 3 different templates to use if you want to, I assume, make your own version that is specific to your own content area, your own class. So 1 new way of doing it that is kind of my updated model that I prefer, but the old tried and true method we used, we'll talk about. And then an experimental, very new, I finished it last week, discussion called Connections. So, okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the history and philosophy behind this discussion strategy, these discussion ideas. And by way of introduction, if you're joining a little late, my name is Ryan Acosta-Fox, he, him pronouns. I teach English at Northwood High School. But actually where this came from was not from the English classroom. This was a contentless idea that we developed. I started teaching at a school called Washington High School in Kansas City, Kansas, 15, 16 years ago, I kind of forget. The plan for us, we wanted, our Kansas reading assessment scores were low. And as a school, we were trying out a literacy initiative, a whole school discussion seminar. We got the idea from my former principal. His name is Dr. Greg Netzer. We went on a trip to his school, Van Horn High School. And in it, they were doing what's called the Touchstones curriculum, developed starting, I think, in the 1980s by some people at St. John's College. There, and especially at Washington, where I worked, we took on this curriculum and we decided to do a whole class in the advisory homeroom, a once weekly whole class seminar where everyone in the entire building participated. Everyone had a homeroom, every student participated, English teachers, math teachers, PE teachers, you name it, everyone from college lit seniors to quote unquote on-level freshmen. I don't like that term, but for lack of a better term, quote unquote on-level freshmen, we were all doing the exact same discussion seminar once a week on, I think, Thursday mornings was the day. So if you can imagine, there was some pushback. Not everyone is going to love that idea of doing a Socratic seminar. But when I don't want to get too far afield, but when I went to Van Horn High School and this is my 3rd year teaching, and I walked into a homeroom class of just a completely random group of kids talking about, with authority, with frankly more authority than I felt I had in the moment, ethos I had in the moment, talking about ancient Greek philosophy. It was really a mind-blowing experience, like a genre or a, what do you call it? Just opened up new horizons to me about what was possible in the classroom. And the answer was much more than I thought was possible. Students were engaged in a very, very higher ordered philosophical conversation about issues that have been a part of humanity for literally millennia, right? Welcome if you're just joining us. I dropped some links in the chat that you'll need. We're on the history slide. I think it's around slide 5 or so, but I'm not totally sure. Okay, so talking too much. So we started doing the St. John's College curriculum, the Touchstones curriculum, and it had some successes and it had some drawbacks for our experience. So some things we kept. Much of the format, a lot of the format ideas we kept. So you start with an initial question, then you have a central text, you have some reflection questions. And roughly you talk about, they were very big on not much context. You just talk about philosophical issues without learning about who Plato was or who Aristotle was. You mainly just talk about their ideas. Okay. We kept those ideas from the St. John's curriculum, but we made some modifications that worked a little better for us. We decided through. First and foremost, what we did is we updated the text from classic to modern. We kept a few classic texts, but we wanted to get modern voices and especially voices from marginalized populations. And hello, welcome. If you're just joining us, I'm going to go ahead and drop some links in the chat. We wanted to include, we wanted voices that were more representative of our student body. You know, I was at a school that was 70% African-American, 20% white, 10% Asian. And at the time, only 5% Hispanic. It's changed since then. So, but we knew we needed representative voices. We also wanted to have representative content, especially non-condescending content. So, you know, we wanted to avoid the pitfall that is, you know, too often people fall into, which is if you bring in, say, a Black writer, then you're going to choose a passage where they talk only about the Black experience in America, right? We knew that wasn't the way to go. Not to limit, of course, you want to talk about that experience, but we decided there's no reason why, you know, everyone should be allowed to talk about all of these big philosophical issues. What does it mean to be lonely? Or, you know, what is the nature of the self? And all of these other things. So we wanted to make sure we had a variety of voices and also that the voices were not limited to particular subject matter. Okay, and if you're just, I think I missed someone, if you're just joining us, welcome. Dropping some links in the chat here. I'm giving a bit of a recap of where this came about. So the other thing we needed is we needed 4 volumes of this because no student couldn't repeat the curriculum. You know, if you did one seminar freshman year, you couldn't do the same seminar your sophomore year. So we needed 4 volumes. That's why we have 128 lesson plans. So no repeats, 32 per year. Okay. The philosophy. Over time, we honed a philosophy of why are we doing this? The goal is that this is founded on the idea that students, through their words, ideas, and questions, are revealing themselves not just to others, but to themselves. Rather than teaching students how to think, our goal was to create and facilitate a dialectical space, a space for talking for students where they could interrogate their reality, question their world, and understand it as an individual and shared experience. We weren't thinking of social emotional learning at the time. I'll admit this was about 8 years ago, but in it, students are practicing all of the key elements of social emotional learning, right? Building and maintaining a community, developing healthy relationships, managing responses to others, identifying opportunities for personal growth and collective change. These are all things that are a necessary, not even a byproduct. They are the whole mission of a seminar community. One of my favorite people, the person who hired me, Dr. Netzer, said, once a person begins to live the life of the mind, there is no going back. So that was our ultimate goal. Okay, I want to talk about the 2 ideas, 2 strategies I use for discussion seminars, Socratic Seminar and connections. One moment. All right, so I'm going to talk about seminar first, the older one of these. Hey, welcome. If you're just joining us, I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat if you need them. So the first thing I'm talking about right now, I'm talking about 2 different discussion strategies. And the first is the Socratic Seminar idea. And share this link, Mr. Fox, very, very authoritative. Okay, I'm going to share another link. Give me 1 second. Let me make my life slightly easier. Seminar 1. This was what the old seminar looked like. Here's a sample. It had 6 steps split up like this. We start with the connections question. We read and annotate a central text. We do a round of individual questions. We share our questions, then we have a long round of large group discussion, and then we reflect, usually in writing with the time remaining. Okay, hold on 1 second. Now, what I'm going to do is share my screen. It's going to look a little messy, but this is the link, the last link I just shared in the chat. This is just a sample, one of those 128 lesson plans, a lesson over a text by Maya Angelou, okay? So we would start with a connection question. We are all in a circle. And this is a question that sort of hints at, suggests what we're going to talk about today. So the other thing, let me time out for a second. These lessons can be read verbatim. The instructions are in bold. I would usually say, okay, in a discussion circle, 5 minutes, everyone shares a short answer to the question below. In this piece, Maya Angelou writes a letter to herself as a child. There's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self. Let's take about 2 minutes to answer that question, and then we'll go around and share. That's what I would say. And it's really intentional that it's verbatim. First, because like I said, didn't always have buy-in. We needed teachers who weren't going to prep. It was a homeroom class. No offense to homeroom advisory, but some teachers were just not prepping at all for it. They were looking at the lesson the same day that they saw it. It is what it is. We want to get better at that, but we knew we needed to make sure to catch that. Second, we had students who would facilitate the conversations themselves. So this was at the other echelon of how cool it was. So we wanted them to have the instructions. They wouldn't struggle with it. So anyway, so we would have a connection question, it suggests the material. Then round two, we look at a central artifact. Now in English or in Socratic Seminar, it was a piece of writing. Here it's a letter that Maya Angelou wrote to herself. We take 8 minutes, one person reads it out loud, everybody silently annotates, marking at least 3 things and writing a comment for each of those things. Okay. What I usually do next is I let this step blend into the step 2. So I'll say, if you haven't yet, you want to flip to the back. Step 3 asks you to create an individual question that you could share with the whole class. Here's an example. Sometimes I'll read that. Sometimes I'll say, like, I was really hung up on how she said, this is one of the greatest gifts. I'm not totally sure what she means by that. So I'm just kind of demonstrating thinking aloud. So I'm going to write this. Okay. Step 4, what we'll do is everyone will go around in a circle. Everyone shares her or his question. Note 5 interesting questions by writing down the speaker's name. Make sure kids don't write down the whole question, because they'll miss every question. You know, if they're writing down a question, it's hard to, listen to what other people are saying. But I'm going to, if you like these ideas, I'm going to reveal what's behind the curtain here real quick. This step is the magic step for me, because kids, especially even shy kids, they are looking ahead to step 5, the large group conversation. That's a scary step. People don't want to talk. It's hard. Seminar is hard. It's a process, right? So that's the sleight of hand. They're looking ahead of that. In my experience, I tend to have 95 to 100% sharing rate on step 4, because they're not thinking about step 4, they're thinking about step 5. So kids tend to just read what they wrote. They'll share their questions. And it's almost on a spiritual plane for me, how great these questions tend to be when you give kids the space to think of something and really interrogate a text. I am frequently amazed at how on another plane, how good the questions are. And when we go through a round and everyone shares a question, even if what then ensues is just a terrible seminar where no one talks, or it was just totally off the wall, I still feel like there's a pretty important success that happens. And this is where the every voice comes in for me. As I've kind of set this up, the large group part is the process, right? And this is what's tricky. This is where we highlight interesting questions from step 4. We discuss in a large circle. At the beginning of the year, we set up group norms. This is something that happens very horizontally, very democratically in your community. There's a million different outcomes. So I don't want to talk too much about them because I would love to talk about them one-on-one, but today I could talk for hours and my timer says I have 9 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So after a round of 15 minutes, I'll set a 15-minute timer, sharing whose question we want to start with. I try and model behaviors, I will say, of like, if no one says they want to start with a question, I'll say like, Aaliyah, I loved your question. I didn't write it down though. Could you repeat it for me? Then she repeats it. And I might, if again, prod a little bit about like, oh, that sort of reminds me about Jose's question. What was it, Jose? Or even just like, Jose, you had a question like that, but how would you answer Aaliyah's? And then try and get, a little pinball of discussion going. It's a process, like I said. And then we would reflect in a journal. Okay. The other strategy is what I'm calling connections. Now, this I designed specifically for advisory. And this, honestly, I don't know how I'm going to use it yet. I'm a resource teacher. I'm going to have an advisory next year. I might, if I'm able, I'd love to use it there if I can. But I wanted to finish this idea. So here is a connection seminar, still in the experimental phase. There it is again. And this is designed for a 30-minute lesson. And the goal here is also, the goals remain the same, sort of contextless discussion about roughly no context about an artifact. Okay. So we start with the connection question, exactly the same as last time. In this reading, Gloria Anzaldúa talks about how important her language is to her. Have you ever been mocked because of the way you speak or write? This one comes from Unit 3. So that I would maybe append a trigger warning to that. I don't think I would do that on day one, that question, but I would maybe alter it if I needed to. And then here I've actually scaffolded the types of annotations I want them to take. So I give them, it's a much shorter passage, short paragraph, or even a quote, right? And I've done this a couple times, and each time I've modeled what I want, so I will, on the whiteboard, draw a big square. What questions does this reading spark? Similarities. How are you like the speaker? How are you different from the speaker? And then confusions. What parts of this reading are confusing? I'll be honest, the first time I did this, it was a lot of modeling. I think I modeled for 5 to 10 minutes, but that is to be expected. And I was impressed by the questioning, very experimental, but so far my early returns, at least in my own English classes, I've liked it, right? And then instead of a written reflection, I asked for just a spoken reflection. So let's reflect on the process. What was your favorite question from today? And then I have these same list of 4 questions. Choose one of them and we'll go around in a circle and we'll answer. Like I said, this one is designed for a 30-minute lesson plan because that's our homeroom length. Again, I'm hopeful I get to do this next year. I love advisory. I'm very excited to have an advisory again. So I'm hopeful that it will work once a week. And then the other day, we kind of do all the other administrivia stuff we need to do in advisory. And last, I mentioned this, I linked to it. I don't want to talk a whole lot about it, but it is a written way to track data. A lot of this is a holistic method. But I wanted to give one connection. I like to just track, without like percentages necessarily. I just like a way to keep notes on how the conversation is going, right? So this is actually, frankly, not a digital document. It's meant to be printed and written on. But this is a way that I like to label everyone's name in class. I have a little circle up here where I just personally like to draw what the circle looks like. I'll actually just write initials. So who's talking, and that way I can see little patterns. Like sometimes you'll see like only the conversation is in this bottom left quadrant. So I think like maybe I should try and mix up the seats a little bit. How many times people talk, you will absolutely see patterns here. Definitely, like some kids will talk a whole lot, other kids won't talk at all. How many of those, I love tracking how many times people are called on or if they just speak unprompted is really interesting information to me. And then I kind of grade this out a little at the bottom, but I just have a space for notes at the bottom. So it's one method of keeping track of the data. So, okay, so I think we're done at 3:15. I'm sort of on time, although it was a heck of a lot of talking on my end. So the last thing I wanted to do, of course, was three things. First off, say this, talking about Socratic Seminar is my favorite thing in the world. I was a seminar coordinator for 4 years, and genuinely not a day goes by that I don't miss that aspect of my job where it was this building wide mission we were working towards. So I will drop everything. Please, you'd be doing me a favor someday. So I'd much rather talk about seminar than score progress checks. I don't know. So send me an email, or I didn't put my cell phone here, but I'll be happy to chat or Zoom if you want to talk about it. Second, I wanted to reserve some space for any questions you might have. Darn it, my screen is being a little wacky. I'm going to share, forgive me, tabbing all over the place. If you don't mind filling out, they asked me to share this form as well. So while I am remembering how to get to the chat, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you so much for being here. So what questions do you have for me?
What did you say the scheduling was for this? The timing, the amount of times?
Yeah. For like one individual lesson?
For how, I mean, this isn't obviously a daily thing.
Right. Oh, yeah. Good point. I personally tend to do it no more than once a week. Just because I found that if I overdo it, it can get kind of relaxed and maybe sort of like diminishing returns on, I don't know, like for me, once a week has been a sort of magic number at most. Here and there, we'll do it like once every 2 weeks, maybe even once a unit. If it's a short unit, like if it's a 3 or 4 week unit, maybe sometimes I'll have a seminar to sort of guide where we're going to go with the unit, you know? Does that make sense?
Sure does. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But maybe some people are, I'm not like I don't consider myself like a master teacher necessarily. So some people, maybe you can do it every day. Every now and then I'll have a dream of just doing a seminar year. I have 168 lessons, so it can happen. So other questions you have for me?
I have a quick question. Thank you so much for all this information. It's really great. So especially with newcomer ESOL students, I'm curious if you've ever given options that are nonverbal, even though I know that this is a Socratic seminar meant for speaking. Are there any alternatives that you've gone with for this in the past?
No, I'm going to say no, even though there should be. I'm actually very new to this year, have more ESOL centric class. And it's been, this process is something that this seminar protocol is developed over years, like I said, at a school with 5% Latinx community, 10% Asian community. Our ESOL population was decidedly lower than it currently is. So I love that idea, and I want it to be better. So I'd love to chat with you more about how to make that happen. Every week I do this with my ESOL students. I feel like I learn new little kernel, of information. I will say over the course of the year, with respect to speaking, speaking has, there's definitely been some growth. It's slightly on a different time scale. So you might not early in the year, I didn't necessarily see growth from like this week to next week, but quarterly you will have students who talk more. I've noticed, as the quarter goes on. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it is definitely, to me, a fluid curriculum where I'm tailoring things all the time, and I would love to make it better in that respect. So yeah.
Sounds
thank you.
good. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? I don't know if we're getting any new people joining. I think you're supposed to go to your other seminar. So oh yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes, thank you so much for coming. By all means, it's good to see everyone. Hey. Oh, I'll add my email to the agenda also. I'm just now realizing. Oh, there it is. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. Bye. Bye, Nora. It's good to see you.